Ever since the local food movement really took hold in the 2000s, farmers and schools have been trying to make a fit. Fresh fruits and vegetables are good for kids and good business for farms. But the obstacles are myriad, even after you consider that schools aren't even in session during the farmers' most productive summer season. 2 schools in St. Lawrence County sit down with the farmer to try to make it work on today's story of the day.
Support for Story of the Day comes from Essex County Arts Council, promoting arts and culture through advocacy and grants to artists and organizations. More at essexcountyarts.org.
Hey, I'm David Sommerstein. It's Friday, April 28th. First up, Governor Kathy Hochul announced yesterday evening that she's reached a conceptual agreement with legislative leaders on the state budget, which is nearly a month late. As Karen DeWitt reports, Hochul says bills could be printed as soon as next week.
Hochul called the news conference a couple of hours after senators and assembly members left the Capitol for the weekend, saying there were too many unresolved issues to approve a spending plan this week. The governor, who appeared alone without the 2 Democratic legislative leaders, says there was sufficient agreement with the legislature on major items to announce the conceptual accord.
We agreed that we're at a point where the major decisions have been made. There's obviously fine-tuning that has to be done. That'll be worked out over the weekend, but literally bills can start being printed. And we're on a path to shutting down the budget process.
The governor had to give up some core elements of her agenda, including a plan to build 800,000 new housing units over the next decade. She blamed the legislature for resisting elements of the plan that would have allowed the state to override local zoning laws. But she says they will try again in the remaining weeks of the session. Hochul did achieve one of her top priorities. She convinced lawmakers to make more changes to the state's controversial bail reform laws. It will give judges more power to set bail in cases of serious crimes by eliminating a requirement that they seek the least restrictive means to ensure a defendant comes back for court dates. Hochul says that clause was leading to a higher recidivism rate.
The agreement removes what is known as the least restrictive means standard, which many judges have said tied their hands. It gives judges discretion. They need to hold violent criminals accountable.
The governor had sought the opening of 100 additional charter schools. The final agreement will yield 22 schools. Existing public schools will receive a record $24 billion in state aid, finally fulfilling a court order that requires all schools to be fairly funded. The legislature did not agree to a proposal by Hochul to raise tuition at public colleges and universities. The governor says there's agreement to raise the state's minimum wage to $17 an hour and tie future increases to the rate of inflation. And there's accord on a plan to help curb climate change. It includes a ban on gas hookups of new homes by 2025 and for all new buildings by 2028. It also includes $400 million in subsidies to low-income households struggling to pay utility bills and to help upgrade to more energy-efficient heating systems. And Hochul says the budget includes new powers for state agencies to close down illegal cannabis shops operating across the state. The governor says they are unfairly competing with the emerging state-created legal marijuana industry, where just 5 retail outlets are currently allowed to sell the drug.
They weren't even able to allow to do searches because we only had civil penalties and not criminal penalties.
The agencies would have the authority to conduct searches and seizure of illegal products and impose fines and bring criminal charges under the state's tax laws. Representatives for Assembly Speaker Carl Hastie and Senate Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins confirmed that a conceptual agreement has been reached on the spending plan, but they did not say why the leaders were not at the announcement. They also could not immediately provide a timetable for when bills might be voted on. An Assembly spokesman also offered the caveat that, while there is an overall accord, the details of many issues remain unresolved. In Albany, I'm Karen DeWitt.
More schools in the North Country are getting interested in putting local fruits and vegetables on kids' lunch trays. But buying directly from farmers is more complicated than buying from big food companies. Making plans at the beginning of the growing season, in other words, right now, is critical. Lucy Grindon went to a farm in St. Lawrence County for a meeting between a farmer and school officials.
Cherie Witten is showing the Parishville School Superintendent, Stephen Coffin, around the Witten family farm in Winthrop, about halfway between Potsdam and Messina.
You want to go back in the hot greenhouse? Or
sure.
Yeah.
The greenhouse feels like a sauna inside. Tables of little green seedlings fill the building.
We have a lot of brassicas in here. Broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, kale, kohlrabi.
Before too long, another school official pokes her head through the door.
Hi, Kristen.
Kristen Colarusso-Martin is the food service director for the Messina Central School District. She and Coffin are both here to talk about how the school districts might partner with Witten's farm to get local food on kids' plates. Coffin says public school food policies mostly facilitate buying food from big companies, not small farms.
We're looking at how to circumvent that to better set us up so we can do these purchases next year.
Their goal is to set up partnerships where they tell farmers what they want to buy in the spring, so the farmers have enough time to plant more for the schools. Last fall, Messina and Parishville both bought some produce for school lunches from local farms. But because they didn't plan and discuss that months in advance, there just wasn't a lot of produce left to sell to the schools, Witten says.
What was actually left available for you was a lot less than what hopefully will be this year, when we're able to plan together and decide what we should focus on for crops.
That's why they're having this conversation, sitting around the dining room table in the Witten family's farmhouse. Coffin and Colarusso-Martin say things will be different this year.
We're not planning in a vacuum anymore. Like, these conversations have started, and there are some local farms now that have more trust in some of the schools or institutions, so they're going to make the commitment. That's the big difference right now.
Cherie is, guaranteeing to try to plant the things that we need. We in turn need to be able to purchase them from her to not leave her high and dry with, 40 pounds of carrots.
There are still potential hurdles, like the fact that a lot of school kitchens aren't equipped to deal with real food.
Kitchens right now are not designed for fresh produce.
Coffin says kitchen staff are used to working with frozen, prepackaged meals that just get popped into an oven.
We literally had to buy knives for our kitchen.
And on the farmer's side of things, planting a huge amount of one crop for a large institutional buyer like a school is a big commitment. But Witten and the two school district reps see a lot of potential good that could come out of a partnership. Colarusso-Martin says it's partly about pride of place for the students.
When we start purchasing local, I really want to celebrate that it's local and our heritage, and maybe fold in some Native American dishes, because we have students from Akwesasne.
A handful of schools, like Saranac Lake, have been trying to do this for years, and it's starting to catch on more widely. Witten says she helped put together a bid from farmers in the area last week to sell produce to schools in Essex County. Coffin says as poverty increases, access to local organic foods decreases. Individual families may not always have the purchasing power or the time to provide local food. So public school lunches may be the best way to make sure kids get it.
More than likely, schools are going to be in the best position to provide local food to kids rather than individual homes.
Buying from local farms also keeps more money in the North Country economy. Colarusso-Martin estimates that the food budget just for Messina's 5 schools is about $1 million a year. The Messina School District is the largest in St. Lawrence County, with 2,500 students. Parishville is one of the smallest, with around 300 students in one school building.
You've got the largest district in St. Lawrence County and one of the smallest districts in St. Lawrence County.
Both of those,
which is great.
Which is great, because if it works for both of us, it'll work for any district.
No deals have been finalized yet, but the school districts hope to reach deals with farmers like Witten soon. Lucy Grindon, North Country Public Radio, Winthrop.
We have more news all the time on our website, ncpr.org. Music today by Caitlin Scholl of Lake Placid and the Caramello Trio of Potsdam. I'm David Sommerstein, North Country Public Radio.